Welcome to Overprescribed, the show that raises America's awareness on pharmaceutical medications, all in an effort to help you, the everyday consumer, to live the safest, healthiest, and most informed medication experience possible. I'm your host, Mika Pollack, and you're listening to episode number 11. Now, you may remember from episode number 4 that I mentioned an organization called ISMP, or the Institute for Safe Medication Practices. And that organization is an independent watchdog that publishes these drug safety reports on a quarterly basis. Now, if you didn't listen into episode number 4, let me tell you a little bit about these reports. Basically, they are reports that are written by independent experts who are affiliated with ISMP, and they basically take the data reports from the FDA's adverse drug event reporting system and do their own analysis and independent assessment on what the data means, particularly with regard to new or emerging medication safety concerns that the public should be aware of. Well, the public as well as healthcare providers. And I really enjoy these reports. I will always pay attention to these reports. And when I read something in them, I want to bring them to your attention as well. So in their most recent report, which was published in May of this year, it was called Perspectives on Emerging Drug Risk. I wanted to take some time to bring up some of the highlights from that report, because I think as consumers of medications, both prescription and over-the-counter medications, we owe it to ourselves to be as informed as possible about the medications that we're consuming. And the main points in this report are things I think most people would probably want to know. I want to focus on at least 4 things, 4 notables, I like to call them, from the report. And my first one on the list here starts with regards to antidepressants. So they highlighted in the report that a massive study about antidepressants was published earlier this year. It was actually a study that was reported or published in a journal called The Lancet, and it was reported in the month of February of this year. And this particular study that was published found that antidepressants generally work, but that messaging is a bit misleading. So to get to the heart of the matter, you really need to look at the data that they analyzed and take a closer look at the safety profiles of specific antidepressants. And it's true about getting to the heart of the data, because if there's nothing else that I've learned from working in the research industry, it's that numbers, the data, all of that speaks volumes. Now, to expand on that, what I mean is that if you're going to only look at a certain time point or only look at a certain level of severity of illness or disease, and then make a generalized statement, then it could provide a misleading message to everyday consumers who don't know the details of the data, but or are on the receiving end of that generalized statement. So if you listen to patient reviews about antidepressants, some people say it works for them. And you can read that anywhere, whether you're on Facebook, Twitter, other websites, forums. But you'll also hear people out there talking about how antidepressants were catastrophic or very damaging for them in terms of their health outcomes. So to make a blanket statement that all antidepressants work just doesn't seem like an accurate statement to make. Now, the May 2018 QuarterWatch report that I'm looking at did a very good job at summarizing what this study was about, and the way I've interpreted their interpretation of the Lancet report breaks down to this. The Lancet study that concluded all antidepressants work made that conclusion based on a small subset of patients who are typically in clinical trials, but are not representative of the majority of people who take antidepressants in the real world. So the study looked at moderately severe depressed individuals, while the majority of real world patients would fall more in a less depressed status or mild to moderate category of depression. Also, the duration of the clinical trials from that Lancet study were focused on a 6 to 8 week duration, whereas again, in the real world, there's a difference. In the real world, 68% of U.S. patients taking antidepressants report taking them long-term and not short-term. And lastly, if you look into the details of the study itself and compare it to what we know in the real world, the only measures of safety outcome that the Lancet study looked at was dropout rate for people who dropped out of the study and dropout rate for adverse drug events, even though, as the QuarterWatch report team pointed out, and I'll quote this, most antidepressants have warnings or precautions for suicidal behaviors in young adults, life-threatening serotonin syndrome, precipitation of manic episodes, sexual dysfunction, weight gain, bone fractures, abnormal bleeding, and discontinuation effects. The report here goes further by taking one antidepressant as an example. The drug is called vortioxetine, also goes by the brand name Trintellix, Trintellix. And this drug, Trintellix, was FDA approved in 2014, so it's a relatively new drug. It's actually one of the newest antidepressants out there on the market. This drug was a part of the Lancet study's antidepressant list, and it had the middle ranking for efficacy in that Lancet study. I'm going to read right from QuarterWatch's May 2018 report on page 7 under vortioxetine efficacy for approval. It reads, in seeking FDA approval, the sponsor, Takeda Pharmaceuticals USA, conducted 10 clinical trials of vortioxetine at various doses. The results illustrated the marginal effect typical of antidepressant drugs. The FDA found that 4 out of 10 trials did not provide evidence of a beneficial effect, and in one unsuccessful trial, an approved comparator, duloxetine, which also goes by the name Cymbalta, also could not be distinguished from an inactive placebo. The efficacy claim depended heavily on foreign trials. Among the 5 trials in U.S. patients, 3 trials failed to document a benefit. Even in the 2 trials the FDA scored as wins, no benefit was demonstrated at either the 10 milligram recommended starting dose or a 15 milligram starter dose. The results for this newest antidepressant confirmed and expanded a 2008 study that reported 49% of trials supporting the approval of 12 other antidepressant drugs failed to establish a drug benefit. I know some of you may be thinking, well, how did an antidepressant like Trintellix become FDA approved in the first place? And it's a very good question. But I think the point, at least what I'm getting from this section here in the QuarterWatch report that I wanted to make, was that when we hear generalizations about the benefits of antidepressants, there are details out there to debunk those benefits, those blanket statement benefits. And the details that are out there will shine an entirely different light on the subject of antidepressant effectiveness and antidepressive safety. Number 2 thing I want to point out from this QuarterWatch report was actually the total numbers of cases that came in. So QuarterWatch took a look at the third quarter of 2017 reports. And so that for that quarter of July 2017 to September 2017, there were 291,999 cases of adverse events reported into the FDA's adverse event reporting system, representing over 600 medications classified as either biologics, prescriptions, or over-the-counters. Experts look at these numbers in different ways, and one way is to look at which ones were considered serious versus those that were considered not serious. Let's talk about the totals for the serious events first. So out of the 291,999 cases, out of the cases of individuals reports, 21,778 of those cases represented patients or consumers who had died as health outcomes. 44 1,875 where cases or patients were hospitalized, and 78,500 considered as other serious outcomes. And those were the serious events reported. Now, out of the 291,999 cases, 146,846 cases were considered not serious. All of that breaks down percentage-wise as about half of the 291,999 cases for that third quarter of last year being considered serious, and the other half considered non-serious, with the non-serious cases edging out the serious cases just a tad bit, 49.8% versus 50.1%. Now, when it comes to who reported the adverse event cases to the FDA, well, it appears that drug or pharmaceutical manufacturers reported the majority, or in this circumstance for third quarter, 94.5% of the 291,999 cases came from drug manufacturers. The drug companies Amgen and Roche submitted the most reports, and drug companies Sandoz and AstraZeneca submitted the least. Now, while drug companies are mandated to submit their reports to the FDA, healthcare providers and patients and consumers are not. So that is one huge reason why cases being submitted to the FDA continue to be low. And more importantly, the conclusions that can be made from what's been reported into the FDA about our medication safety in this country is only as good as what the FDA receives. And they don't receive much when you consider how many prescriptions were actually dispensed in that same quarter of 2017. Another three big point from the QuarterWatch May 2018 report was the topic of Imodium A-D and how that over-the-counter, very popular anti-diarrheal medication has been around for decades, but has gained some national attention because of people overdosing or abusing the drug because of this one reason. It turns out that Imodium A-D, which also goes by the drug name loperamide, is an opioid. And substance abusers figured out that if you take enough of it, that you could actually experience similar effects or mimic the similar effects as if you were taking something like morphine or oxycodone. Given its easy access to purchase, this was considered a dangerous safety concern, and the FDA acted quickly once it was brought to their attention by issuing more than one drug safety communication. So what's going to happen will be the release of a new abuse-resistant packaging, which I'm pretty sure is not released yet, but will likely have less dosing within that new updated packaging. Not sure if this is the only solution that needs to be implemented and how effective that solution will work, but I thought it was something that consumers should definitely know, and I'm glad the QuarterWatch team documented this in the report. And number 4 on the list of my notables from this report, and it's definitely not the least notable, was what is being called dispensing errors and name confusion stemming from GlaxoSmithKline's Ellipta brand of inhalers. Now, GlaxoSmithKline also goes by GSK. So apparently GSK has 4 separate oral inhaler products used to treat individuals with asthma and or chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, which is also commonly referred to by the acronym COPD. And the products, these 4 products are all different because of the specific ingredients within each inhaler. So each of the 4 have a different name, but GSK decided to add the word Ellipta, Ellipta, to all 4 inhalers in addition to their unique product name, almost kind of like a brand suite, if you will, of these inhalers. So, for example, Brio Ellipta has the ingredients fluticasone and vilanterol and can be used to treat asthma and COPD. But our Annuity Ellipta, 2 words, has only fluticasone in it, and it's used to treat asthma. Now, there's also, in this suite of 4 inhaler products, there's also a Neuro Ellipta and Increase Ellipta, both indicated for COPD. Anyway, the QuarterWatch team identified over 500 reports of product confusion or dispensing or prescribing errors linked to these 4 products based on end of quarter 3, 2017 data in the 12 months prior to the end of that quarter. So confusion appears to lie in distinguishing the differences between some of the packaging and product images or tutorials on the product websites with erroneous or misleading images. And somehow, some way, GSK is likely trying to figure out how to handle this problem for eliminating or at least significantly reducing the confusions amongst the consumer as well as healthcare provider community. Okay, I just have one in the news story today. It is a big one because it involves a $1 billion purchase by a $1 billion company. And if you haven't heard about it, then I'm going to tell you about it right now. Well, apparently, it came out in news stories across the country today that Amazon purchased a company called PillPack. Now, I first heard about PillPack, I want to say earlier this year, or maybe it was last year, but I remember seeing the commercials for PillPack and I thought, you know what? This online pharmacy is going to be huge. And so I am not surprised that Amazon has picked it up, purchased it, and now PillPack becomes a part of an even bigger company with an even bigger influential reach, particularly in the U.S. economy and the retail space. According to a New York Times article that I read today, PillPack is a company that started in 2013, so they haven't really been around very long. And they have modeled their business to have this value proposition in taking pills and putting them into these easy to use or easy to sort packs for American consumers to just purchase the pills online and have them delivered to them. They are targeting consumers apparently who have chronic conditions and who are on multiple medications. And so for me, I think that for anyone who has multiple medications and they are trying to manage their life around that, then you may find value in this. But I think from a public health perspective, my concern is that PillPack will actually make it easier for consumers to take their medications. And some of these medications may not be safe for consumers to take. Regardless of how it shakes, the innovation behind PillPack is something that is notable. It's widespread. The company's doing amazing, and Amazon has paid attention to that. So that's the only news story I have to share today. I will put a link in our show notes so you can also read the New York Times article about this Amazon purchase of PillPack. Until next time, thanks for listening to the show and take care.